we're focusing now on SalSphere Hair Stimulator, which is a technology based on encapsulating natural ingredients. What are the natural ingredients that can compete with a drug? This is the secret to be discovered. So just follow me. So before that, we need to just use the right words to describe what is that we're wanting. So the life cycle of a hair is based on three major steps. The first one is the anagen. The A stands for the anagen, the active phase. This is the growth phase. This is where you can see in the picture how the hair follicle is connected to the bloodstream, and the dermal papilla is swollen, it's active, it's growing. Remember this picture because then I show you actual hair follicles removed from the scalp, and you will see the same effect, how enriched is the papilla. Then the hair undergoes another phase, a transitional phase that's called catagen. And the hair is kind of disconnecting from the source, and it goes into the telogen phase. Telogen phase is characterized by being on a junction. Either the hair will fall out, as you can see in this diagram. You see the papilla completely separates from the hair follicle, and then a short time, a couple of weeks later, the hair can fall down because it doesn't have a support of nutrition. It's disconnected from the bloodstream. And the blood is bringing the oxygen, the nutrients, and so on, the growth factors, and everything for healthy growth. When it's connected, then the hair will thin and eventually will lose. The other junction, the other way to go is to go back to anagen. And you can see it can go back to early anagen, which means that the hair is leaving and the new hair is coming up. So the follicle is active. We want to be in anagen phase. Any other phase means that we are getting into possibility to lose, thin, and lose the hair. Okay, so with this, you understand we want to be in anagen. Everything is going toward the anagen. How do we get there? So what are we suggesting to use? We are formulating a technology, a submicron sphere, and this submicron sphere is loaded with 4 different ingredients. In a minute, you understand why 4 and why these ingredients, what's unique about them, what's the value, why should they be encapsulated? This is the questions that we're trying to answer over the next couple of minutes. So ingredients number 1 is caffeine. You're probably familiar with the caffeine effect on skin. On hair, we know that from basic science, we know that it blocks the DHT site. We also know that caffeine providing a lot of energy, and caffeine is also affecting the blood flow. So caffeine can narrow the arteries and therefore accelerate the blood flow. When you get more blood flow, you get more energy, you get more nutrients. This is the role of caffeine. Can caffeine do it in the hair follicle easily? Can a technology help to make it better? These are the questions that we need to address. Number 2 is azelaic acid. Azelaic acid, we know from the literature that it blocks the 5-alpha reductase, the enzyme. It doesn't work by itself. It needs another ingredients to work in synergy. We will talk about why do we need to use azelaic acid and how does it work. The third one is Palmetto. It's again, all these are natural ingredients. Palmetto known to block the 5-alpha reductase, and it has a limited efficacy, but it's a surprising material, and it's known for many, many years. Zinc sulfate is a mineral, and the mineral known to function as a cofactor to different enzyme activity. So when you want growth, in this case, you need to supply the cofactor for the enzyme to execute the growth. It's also known as a mineral that balances hormones. And this is kind of responding to the theory that it's the hormone balance that affect the hair loss. So all these are encapsulated in our submicron spheres in order for, number 1 is to increase the bioavailability and bring these ingredients into the hair follicle to retain the anagen phase to stay longer. Okay, so these are different ingredients that work in different pathways for the same purpose. Now, if we would know that one of them is perfect, we use only one, but we don't know which one is the perfect. So unfortunately, we have to use multiple ingredients that work in multiple mysterious ways, but they're all for the same purpose. So let's go one by one and analyze what's really happening. So caffeine, you're familiar with caffeine, extracted from seeds of caffeine plants. What is interesting to say about caffeine is this. The caffeine is moderately soluble in water, moderately. So you can get 2% caffeine in water. So that may be sufficient for activity in vitro. But the question I'm raising, is it sufficient for activity in clinical? Why I'm saying it? Because the log P stands for the logarithmic value of P. P stands for the partition. What does it mean? The partition between octanol and water. So this is a number that describes what is the solubility in oil compared to water. So the log P is a calculated number based on the functional groups of the molecule. It's a -1, which means it's more soluble in water than in oil. Now, you know that in order to penetrate the skin, we need to have more solubility in oil. Okay, so this is a point because this is where we find out that this molecule could significantly benefit from a technology that makes it encapsulated into oily submicrospheres. Data showing us multiple reports showing that caffeine has been stimulating the hair shaft elongation. In other words, it makes the hair grow faster. Okay, can the technology now, which can make it more bioavailable, make it more effective? That's what we're going to figure out. Here is one of the technical reports, one of the papers that was published in the International Journal of Dermatology. It's a very good paper by a group, Fischer et al. And this is what they did. I'm showing you how the data is coming up so you better appreciate the value of this information and the practical value of how to use it. So they did a study, and in this study they applied, practically they use biopsies, which means they cut pieces from the scalp of men that's suffering from baldness, but they took pieces of hair, not the pieces that are bald, okay, and they incubate them in different level of testosterone to find out what's happening. And then after a while, they expose them to caffeine and wanted to see what the caffeine is doing to a hair, a follicle that's already exposed to testosterone. So this is what you see here in the picture. This is the pieces that were taken out from scalp, okay? And then you look under the microscope, you can see what's happening. And I will show you what they saw. What they found out is this. This is in vitro isolated pieces of tissue. They found that if you expose the follicles to caffeine anywhere between 0.001 to 0.005, we see very low concentration, there is a reverse phase, and the caffeine can reverse the effect of testosterone. And you can see it here in these pictures, A, B, C, D, E, and F. For example, you can see how in B, you see a very nice follicle that is characteristic to anagen. And when you put this one into or expose it to caffeine, you see the elongation, C, and more elongation over time of D. However, if you don't do it, you see that there is a miniaturing effect, and in F, it's totally detached. So we found out that from this research concluded that topical treatment of hair follicles with caffeine stimulates the hair growth, okay? And it basically extended the life cycle of the hair by 33%. So this is a significant accomplishment. Here is some more data to explain how caffeine actually works. So the conclusion, I take you directly to the conclusion because we have not much time, is that caffeine is acting as a barrier against DHT. In other words, the process simplified is like this. Imagine this is the membranes, and I'm talking about this, the skin layer, the cell layer around the stem cells. This is where the stem cells are, and this is the layer that we are talking. Imagine these are the receptors, and you expose them to DHT. So what happens when you expose them to DHT? The DHT will settle like a key in a lock, okay? They will connect to the receptors, and now typically what they do, they will start to cause hair loss. This is the nature of DHT in this case. So what is the caffeine is doing? When you apply caffeine, now caffeine has ability to adhere to the same receptor, so it can block the DHT. When it blocks the DHT, then it doesn't let the DHT do what it's supposed to do, hair loss. So one mechanism of caffeine is blocking. It's a competitive ingredient to the same site, okay? Competitive. On the other hand, caffeine has another way to affect the situation, is caffeine can bind in and then generate energy, activate the ATP cycle and generate more energy. Generating energy can help grow the hair. So this is mechanism number 2. Mechanism number 3 is very much non-specific. It enhances the blood flow, which means narrow down the blood vessel, accelerate the blood flow, so more nutrition can come to the hair follicle, and this can regrow the hair. So here are 3 mechanisms by which caffeine can help the situation. So there are many caffeine-based products, mostly in Europe, because it was developed in Germany. And you see here a caffeine shampoo. And I would like to pay attention to the claims that this product is making. First of all, it's saying stimulate hair roots during washing, only during washing. So it's stimulating the hair roots, number 1. Number 2, they say it reduces hair loss. And number 3, it's hair energizer. You see how all these benefits are presented on the product without saying hair regrowth, because hair regrowth is a pharmaceutical claim. And we typically, unless we have full data, we cannot position this as a hair regrowth ingredient. But we can say it's stimulating hair roots, we can say it's reducing hair loss, and it's hair energizing. Here is another example of the same product. And now you see it's of course called German engineering, but I would like you to pay attention to the small letters. It says simply apply daily and leave on for 2 minutes. So you understand that we have a limitation in penetration. If it would absorb immediately, you don't need to wait. But since there is a problem of absorption, making the material more bioavailable, then you need to wait. This is an opportunity for us to bring in the technology that can adhere and then slowly penetrate and bring it where it's needed the most. I want to show you now a third product that's called Fight Fallout. It's based on niacin and caffeine. And look at the claims. Niacin, you understand, caffeine and alpha hydroxy acid. Remember what I said last time? Acid and calcification is another reason that could cause hair loss. So here is a couple of market products, and you get an idea how caffeine is probably used, and you will see later on, with technology, you can significantly enhance the performance. Let's move into the second active that we choose to use. And this is azelaic acid. Azelaic acid is a natural material. It's available from whole grains, barley, wheat, and so on. Here is a picture. It's available as a powder. And of course, in the powder, you can do multiple things with this. What do we know about this? So first of all, it's highly crystalline material. As a powder, it's poorly soluble in water, poorly soluble in water, but it's soluble in glycol. So if you don't want to have glycol in the product, then you have an issue. It's poorly soluble in water, and it's also poorly soluble in oils. It's a very difficult material to suspend and to make it available. But studies have shown, mostly in vitro, and I want to tell you in general, there are not many studies and not many very good studies with many patients. And so what we found out from the studies is that azelaic acid inhibits the 5-alpha reductase, and therefore they saw that it prevents hair loss. And it's available in different products by themselves, or you can see that it's also available with other ingredients. So the first word, azelaic acid, should immediately make you think, how can you put an acid on the scalp? Wouldn't it irritate the scalp? And then we have another problem. So turn out that azelaic acid is a very mild acid, which is good because it's not really harmful on the skin. And there are many products based on azelaic acid. You see here a product for skincare. This is the primary medical application of azelaic acid is as a treatment of inflammatory acne. Okay, the use level you see in this product is 20%. It's pretty high and very difficult to to formulate with this. This is the primary medical application. The secondary medical application is not hair loss. It's treat conditions such as rosacea. It's also very effective as to treat skin hyperpigmentation. It's a very good brightening or whitening, lightening, all these words describe the same thing, of the skin. Where is the hair loss? So it's not. But recent studies have shown that azelaic acid can help with hair loss. And again, the studies are not complete, but many people use it. It's common in the market, and practically patients voted for this, although we don't have official clinical data. Official, which means made in a kind of FDA set. Okay, so there are several evidence to indicate that azelaic acid can be useful. And the British Journal of Dermatology, you have the reference on the bottom, it stated that azelaic acid can inhibit the production of alpha reductase. So the mechanism is clear. And you know that alpha reductase is responsible for the conversion of testosterone to dihydroxytestosterone. And dihydroxytestosterone is the leading cause of hair loss in male pattern baldness. And the reference is below. Now, when azelaic acid is applied topically, it can reduce, so we found some evidence that it reduces the level of DHT, therefore it's preventing minimizing the hair fall down. Interesting to say that many of the studies have not been done only with azelaic acid. So it's very difficult to reach a clear conclusion. So in this case, this study was done in a combination of azelaic acid, vitamin B6, and zinc, okay, all together. And you see the product also on the market are typically combining azelaic acid with minoxidil. The use level of azelaic acid is 5%, minoxidil is 15% on one of the products. This cannot occur typically in the US market, because minoxidil is limited to 5 or less percent. So how does it all work? So we take you a little bit backward to understand how azelaic acid is helping us or can help us. So look at the molecule of testosterone, complex molecule. Look at the molecule of the drug, finasteride, Propecia. You see they are very much similar. So finasteride is a synthetic molecule. It works as a specific competitive inhibitor for the enzyme 5-alpha reductase. It basically fits exactly like the key to the lock. Even more, once it gets into the key, once it gets into the lock, it will stay there. So this is how finasteride works. Look at azelaic acid. Azelaic acid is a totally different molecule, but it has some functional group resembling finasteride and testosterone. So this is a non-specific competitive inhibitor of the enzyme. Because it's non-specific, we need to use much more because it's a random process to bind to the receptor. But this is the mechanism. It's a molecular recognition and so on. How azelaic works. So people use 5% in formulas. And what we know is this, that 5% is 88 times, almost 90 times, the amount requires to block almost all the receptors. But this is in vitro. So it's a very high level that is used, and you see the reference below. So this is one mechanism that azelaic acid is working, competitor and non-competitive inhibition. The second mechanism, which is not less important, is azelaic acid is an antifungal material, drug practically, antifungal, anti-infectious, and anti-inflammatory. And once you put it on the scalp, it can treat either the fungi or the inflammation. And so it can target the two phenomena, and maybe in cases that the hair loss is due to a fungi or inflammatory, then it can help through this mechanism. Here is the product, a US product by Dr. Dennis Goss that uses azelaic acid. And it's very interesting, and I wanted to emphasize that FDA never approved azelaic acid as a hair loss or hair treatment product. It's not like minoxidil. Never. But as I mentioned before, many products contain azelaic acid and people buy, so that indicates that it's working for them. It typically mixed with zinc sulfate, you see here, procyanidin, and vitamin B6. Okay, so it's never azelaic acid alone. And you can see that the claim is nourishing scalp conditioner. The words are selected. Okay, so now you understand the second ingredient, which is azelaic acid. We can move on into saw palmetto. Saw palmetto, we use the seeds of the palm tree, and studies have shown that it reduces the activity of alpha reductase. And it's a very interesting story how it works. But anyway, the product is available as a powder and a tablet, and people can take it orally. Now, how it's all worked out and what is the connection with hair loss? Maybe you learn and remember it from the story. So the story is this. Research found out that DHT is a hormone that involves also in enlargement of the prostate gland, okay? So what is the role of the prostate? The prostate, you will see in a minute. So the prostate can be enlarged in high concentration of DHT in this location. So the increasing of the prostate gland, you see here, this is the urinary bladder, and this is the prostate. This is a normal prostate. This is an inflamed prostate gland. And you see it's pushing toward the bladder, and therefore it causes men to go pretty often to urinate, to the bathroom. So it's not always a good experience. But they found out that people that getting Sol Palmetto, the prostate can reduce and enough to live a normal life. Practically, that's the bottom line. So then the scientists started to think, if this is the case, why it will not work on the hair, scalp? Can it affect the hair growth as well? So this is the connection. So what people started to test it, what did they found? In topical, I'm not talking about oral delivery. Oral delivery, there is no conclusive data. But topical, they found out that after 50 weeks, men and women that were using Palmetto saw twice increase in hair growth compared to the control. So this is a good hint. And here is another source, Singapore clinic, a clinical study showing the main number increase percent. And you see people that applied Palmetto, the red line is much higher than the yellow line, which means the Palmetto has a chance to work. Interestingly, they didn't use only Palmetto, but they combine it with other ingredients like cysteine, castor oil, and azelaic acid, of course. So you see, very difficult to reach conclusions under these conditions. So we're trying to combine data in order to verify what we have. So what do we learn? First of all, from Palmetto, there is no consistent evidence that it works. No, you will see also why. Palmetto is not as effective as finasteride. In all cases, finasteride was better. Even people that took mega dose didn't see an effect. But what people saw is it's a safe material over a long period of time. Some people saw an effect, like you see in this reference, perfecthairhealth.com. They are showing some data from dermatologists that saw increase in hair growth. So let's summarize now and of Palmetto. And I would like to compare it to finasteride, because finasteride is a drug very well known. So let's look step by step. Palmetto is a natural product. It's a blend. It's not a pure product. And every source and batch is different compared to finasteride, which is synthetic, it's pure, it's a single molecule. So that already is a cause for the variations in results. And when you say not consistent, you know why immediately. Now, what is interesting, 2 points are interesting in this studies. Number one, Palmetto is selective. It's reducing the DHT at the scalp and the prostate and not all the body. Finasteride is not selective. It reducing the DHT all over the body. Okay, so now you may relate this to the side effect. And I want to bring you directly here, the side effect. In case of Palmetto, if there were side effects, they were rarely recorded. The side effect was only about the gastrointestinal stresses, like diarrhea or something like this. Not only this, the side effects were positive. Many people reported the change, the increase in the libido, okay, improving the sexual health, okay. In the case of finasteride, there were side effects, and the side effects were related to sexual dysfunction. So you see the differences between these two. The mechanism in case of Palmetto is a competitively non-competitive inhibitor of type 2,5 alpha reductase. So this is the first time I mentioned there is type 2 of the enzyme 5 alpha reductase. What's important, I tell you at the end. And this is a competitively inhibitor of the type 2. And the bottom line is the following. Palmetto is inconsistent results, especially when you take it orally because of the natural source and the blending and so on. Some studies say it helps, others say it's not. However, the drug companies that makes finasteride is claiming 85% success. So this is the issue with the Palmetto, and the number 4 is zinc. Why did we choose zinc? Because zinc helps hormone level, regulate hormone level, number one. Then it is effective in preventing and treating hair loss. People find evidence for this, either the man or female. And you see the effect is clear, the crown baldness compared to frontal baldness. Now, how would you know if you need zinc in the treatment? One of the hints that I can share with you is one, but there are many other indications. You look at the nail, if you see a white spot in the nail like here, then you see this patient is deficient with zinc. So zinc can help him. Okay, now we understand the four ingredients. I hope now we can ask the question how we can increase the success rate of these materials. And I want to review what we learned. So here are the functional ingredients. Here are the major challenge, the limiting factor for success, based on my understanding, and the mechanism of operation, how they work. I want to emphasize this. Both caffeine, azelaic acid, Palmetto have a major problem with bioavailability because of their reduced solubility in fat. So if they are reduced solubility, they cannot get to the hair follicle. But interestingly, they work on different mechanisms, okay, compared to zinc, which is a different family. That's why we combined here ingredients of natural source, but they have different mechanism because we not always know what is the reason for a certain person to lose hair or thin hair. So we combine mechanism, and hopefully one of them will work more than the other. So we're coming back to our technology. We have a sub-micron sphere of about 1 micron, 0.1 micron in diameter, and we encapsulate all the four ingredients into one sphere. This sphere, SalSphere Hair Stimulator, is in form of a suspension. Suspension is like milk, like particles of fat that are suspended in water. The same thing goes with SalSphere Hair Stimulator. SalSphere Technology allows to get a standard package of the four different ingredients. This is required in order to get consistency in performance. It's a stable form. It extends the shelf life. There is no precipitation. There is no floating and so on. It is suspendable in water-based emulsion. Easy to formulate with this because it's non-ionic. It has an ability to adhere to the skin. If it doesn't adhere well to the skin, it cannot give you long-lasting benefit. And the most important is it is a vehicle for follicular delivery. It enables the materials to get into the hair follicle, to the stem cells, where all this biology happening. So follicular delivery is the key of this technology. This is what makes these ingredients work so much better. What is follicular delivery? You see at this structure, a cross-section diagram showing you the cross-section of the hair follicle. You see if there is no follicular delivery, then everything that we use will stay on the top. Very little will go in deeper layer of the skin. But when we go with SalSphere Hair Stimulator, it has an affinity to go inside the hair follicle. So hair follicle is a very important route for drug delivery. Many studies, and I'm quoting here only one from 2007, that identified the importance of topical caffeine, was studied with caffeine delivery, that shows that it penetrates 2 to 3 times faster through the follicle than through the cellular regular way. And this is a demonstration of what we are talking about. We are talking about the ability of the spheres to penetrate into the hair follicle. So there is a space between the skin and the hair, small enough, but fine enough for the particle to penetrate. Then they get into the area where the sebum is, and the sebum is oil. The particles are oil. The sebum will eventually dissolve them, and now the material can be accessible to the rest of the skin. Here you see a confocal microscopy picture, and we are showing here particles that are loaded with a fluorescent agent, okay, and put on the top of the skin. And as we let the camera work, you see how the red particles, the red color is, you see here, now it's applied, it's spread all over. And what I'm showing you with the arrow, this is the hair follicle. It's pretty big follicle on a pig skin. And as we go deeper, you see how the red is concentrated into the tunnel, and all the red eventually disappears in this tunnel, indicating that we are talking about a special way to penetrate into the hair follicles. So now we know it's penetrating. We know we measured it. We have additional data. I, of course, cannot bring everything into one presentation. Here is a way that we suggest to use it. So you see here, we're using about 2% hair stimulator. We're using SalSilk, and you're using natural hair growth promoter that I explained last week at the level of 2%. This is one example of formula. I also want to tell you that in clinical studies, we use a much higher level of natural hair growth promoter. So let's summarize what we have right now. We're using a complex of 4 different ingredients. They work in different mechanisms. Caffeine is typically blocking DHT sites. It's providing more energy and blood flow. Azelaic acid, again, blocks the 5-alpha reductase. It's also antifungal, anti-inflammatory. Palmetto is another material that is blocking in a very specific way. So we're not generically blocking all the DHT receptor because we want to continue to live a healthy life. And zinc sulfate, which is a cofactor of enzymes that needs to regulate hair growth, and also a way to balance the hormones. Here is an important thing that I wanted to add to this webinar. And it's not directly related, but I think it would be interesting to answer the question, why some people are bald in the front and others are bald in the crown? And why some people are not bald at all? Okay, why? So here is a theory and explanation. So we have different types of 5-alpha reductase in our body. Type 2, I start with 2, not with 1, because I mentioned 2 before. Type 2 alpha reductase is an enzyme that expresses its activity in scalp, especially the crown, and prostate. Especially the crown, high concentration of type 2. Type 1, however, is more available, more active in the forehead. So some materials are blocking only 2, some materials are blocking only 1, but we don't know enough to handle all of this. Now, how come people don't get bald at all? This is because they have a mutation in the 5-alpha reductase. They just don't have the enzyme at all. So they don't have the enzyme, they never get bald. So now you know the secrets behind. So let's try to summarize what is the value in SalSphere Hair Stimulator. Hair Stimulator offers 5 different points of differentiation, which you should know, and you can make use of this. First of all, it's a fixed dose. There is no variation. All the batches have the same level of the 4 ingredients that we're talking. So we basically provide consistency of formulation. Then it's a stable formula. There is no crystallization. I didn't talk about the fact that caffeine at a higher concentration tend to get crystal. You see in the picture on the top. Okay, but when you take the same concentration of caffeine and put it in SalSphere, now you have a SalSphere suspension. You don't see the crystals. In many cases, we checked product with caffeine and we let them dry on the skin, and under the microscope, we could see the crystals that you can see in this picture. So if there are crystals, they are not bioavailable. They just stay on the scalp until they get washed off. So this is the value here in terms of stability and bioavailability. It's non-ionic, which means you can use it in any type of formula. You're not limited to anionic thickener or cationic thickener or non-ionic. You can use it in all type of formulas. Then, because the core is fat, lipid, it has a tendency to stick like dirt. So it's depositing. If it's deposit on the scalp, then it will slowly release. It will not be washed off so easily if controls will not have the technology. So that technology makes it stick, adhere, provide a long option for long-lasting release. And you know, it's a biological process. It's not enough to expose the active ingredients for a minute, let's say, and that's it per 48 hours. No, you just have to continuously trigger the system. And number 5, which is the major benefit of this technology, is the follicular delivery. That's what makes the technology or the active ingredients, functional ingredients available at the hair follicle. And these are the 5 points that differentiate this technology and the use of this technology from other things. So summarize it all. What did we learn? That the SalSphere Hair Stimulator offers an encapsulated blend of effective natural ingredients. So we are looking for naturals in the beginning, and this is what we can offer. The blend is unique because it's offer different mechanism to regulate hair growth or hair loss, and not only one, not just blocking the DHT, but many others. And it's designed for targeted delivery, and therefore we think it has a much better chance to provide the right results. Okay, so this summarizes our meeting on a SalSphere Hair Stimulator.